try and straighten this camera. There we go, that should do us today. Oh, I want to bring it back here. It's dogs down the road that have just started barking, and my girl's decided she needs to join in. Whatever they've said upset her a bit. Okay, let's reset. I've just got to try and slow myself down a little bit. How are you all today? Have you slept? Have you eaten? Are you well? And once again, I just want to mention that that's a greeting that a friend of mine uses. She's a business owner and business mentor and a lot of other things, an incredible human being. But she starts her videos with that greeting, and I've always liked it, so I've just been borrowing it a bit lately. Yesterday I did another recap on the linens I had available that I was asked about. I've confirmed with Kathleen. Thank you, Kathleen, for doing that. And if you're seeing this before I email you, the email is pretty well drafted, and I'll send that off to you shortly. Christy has passed on the linens. Maybe I misunderstood, which is very likely because my head's been all over the place the last few days with things that have been going on. So Christy has passed on the linens, which means that I still have these ones available for anyone else who may be interested. So there's this, I wasn't going to run through them again, but if you haven't already seen, I guess I should. So I've got this piece that has been started. It's a table mat or a table doily. Someone has started it. It's lovely stitching. It's a bit of cut work, so once it's finished you'd cut a bit out in here. I don't have the matching thread, it didn't come with it, so it may be challenging to match that colour exactly. So I'm assuming this rust is from that staple. That bit will be cut out. With my bare eye, I can't see any other stains or marks on these pieces. I'm assuming this is linen. All the other pieces I've had are linen. I'm also starting to think that this is a more modern piece as opposed to vintage because it feels different. It's not the same texture. I'm pretty sure there is linen in it, but I'm not entirely convinced it's 100% linen. It almost feels like it might be a linen wool blend. It's a lovely fabric, but if anyone's interested in buying that one is available because I'm not going to get them all done. As much as I'd love to keep them all, I'm not going to get them all done, and I don't think at this stage I will use all the ones I have. And I'm still collecting as well. So there's one that's available if anyone's interested. I've still got this bird one available. Now some of these are heavily stained. And this is one of the reasons I get them. Some of them are passed on to me if they can't be sold in the shop. So this one is, it's this bird design. It's a very pretty design. The crochet instructions are on the bottom here as well. And it has some age marks on it. It's a beautiful pure Irish linen, this one. Beautiful quality. I'm assuming this is a vintage. This is a vintage piece, this one. It has birds in two corners. And this corner's the worst, I think, for the staining. It looks like rust, but I don't think it's rust as such, if that makes sense. I think it's age spots. There's some on this side. There's the birds in here. So the diagonal corners have the birds. The opposite corners have the flower sprigs. I haven't washed them, soaked them or washed them because the only reason I haven't, this is how they've come to me. I haven't tried to clean them because when I did that years ago and soaked the one I had, all the stamping came out, so I couldn't stitch it. So this one does have marks on it. Obviously it has not been stitched, no work has been done. The colour suggestions and crochet instructions come with that one. I found that one at the shop a week or so after I was given that one. So that one's available if anyone's interested in that one. And then I've got one more here available at the moment as well. There will likely be more down the track. I don't go out regularly looking for these things. I have a friend who owns a shop who keeps some for me sometimes. And occasionally I get out and have a look. It's not very often because I don't have a car. And I also have a dog who I take everywhere with me. So unless I have someone with me watching my dog or holding her outside the door of the shop while I'm looking, I don't get out often. So this is the third one. This is another 3-piece Duchess set that's available. This one has autumn leaves on it. This one actually says a 3-piece vanity set. Same thing, vanity set, Duchess set. What was the other word I've heard? This one has a mark up here, I've noticed, an age spot or some kind of stain on it. There's a couple of tiny age spots in here. There's a couple on this one, which I'm assuming are from this instruction paper. Could be a bit of rust from the staples that are in here. And apart from that, that's a little bit of red fluff. I can't really see any other marks with my naked eye on this one. So again, this is a 3-piece Duchess set. This is a vintage one. It has these lovely leaves on it, which they suggest doing in these beautiful autumn tones, reds, orange, greens and yellows. And the reason I'm passing this one on is because I don't like these colours. They're not my colours. And I'm not overly fussed on the autumn leaf design either. It's not my favourite. I mean, if it was the only one I had, I'd certainly stitch it. But I have some other ones that I really like that I'd prefer to do. So if anyone's interested in this one, that one's also available. So there's 3 other pieces still available at the moment, if anyone's interested. I also have one at the moment, neon coloured chunky zipper available, if anyone's interested in that guy. I've bought a couple. They only had green and orange left. I've bought a couple that I thought I might use in the Vintage Textile Collages, in the Needlebooks or the Huswifts or something. I'm not sure if they work because this is quite chunky. Look at the size of that zipper pull there compared to my hand. It is a chunky zip. The zipper piece here is all plastic, but it's on the fabric zipper tape. So that is that's a 26 centimetre zipper, that one. So that's it. That's the length of the zipper. So if anyone's interested in having a go at that, I've also got that available. Now, I thought we'd just have a bit of a stitch together. I've had my occupational therapy and hydrotherapy today, and they pushed me really hard again today, way beyond what I have been doing previously. I also had to do some balance exercises, which were really hard for someone who hasn't done anything like that before. I had a round, I guess you'd call it a plate, and it had like half a ball on the bottom, so it just rocks like this. But it was in the pool, and I had to stand in the water and use my core to balance on this plate. And it took me a few minutes I just kept tipping over all over the place. And every time they'd say squeeze your bum in and your core, but every time I did that, my knees would lock up really straight. But you're supposed to have slightly bent knees. So it took me a while to work that out. And then when I did stand up, you had to hold on to the rail, obviously, to stabilize yourself. And then I just kept wobbling and I was getting frustrated because they wanted me to stand on it for 10 seconds. I kept getting frustrated with myself, but then all of a sudden I realized I was holding my breath and tensing my entire body while I was trying to stand on this wobble board. Once I recognized that, I started to be aware of my breathing and I tried to slow it down, and then I could feel the rest of my body start to relax, and then almost instantly I was almost able to just stand on it without even tipping. It did tip a bit, but then all of a sudden I worked out if I put my hands out like this. I tried a few different other ways, it didn't work. But if I just put my hands out like that on top of the water, just out at my sides a bit, like this, I just started to relax more and kept my balance. And I was just concentrating on my breathing. And the therapist turned around to me and said, "Do you realise that you've been standing on that for 3 minutes? I only asked for 10 seconds. I said, "I want to keep going." She said, "Right, keep going." But then not long after that, our time had run out, so I had to get out of the pool. But that one was really interesting. It's given me a really huge workout. I thought it would be good because I've been having some balance issues since the concussion. So I really enjoyed that. But the point is, it's been really pushing me, and you know, I'm really sore, which I don't mind being sore because I like to feel that I'm doing something and achieving something. But I'm so fatigued. So what they've been telling me to do is when I get home, I'm supposed to rest. And to me, doing this is resting. You know, putting a load of laundry on's resting. Doing a bit of gardening's resting. But they've told me that I need to actually sit down on the lounge and read a book and not do anything. So I'm finding that really hard. So I thought I'd just come on and do some stitching instead. I've got that many things on the go. For those of you who may have been following along with the Stitch-Along, I haven't abandoned it. It is still happening. I haven't done any work on it for a while because there's a couple of reasons why. This piece here, I'm still working on it. I've done a little bit of stitching down here since we last talked. But I've put it aside for a little bit because if you've seen before, those of you who've seen my another video, I can't remember which one it was, I was talking about when you get stuck sometimes on your piece, it's good to walk away and come back with fresh eyes. Now, you might be able to just walk away for 10 minutes, get a cup of coffee and come back and go, "Oh, I didn't see that. I can do this, that and that," you know, and you're all inspired again. Sometimes it can take a bit longer. So I think I've had this away for about a week now. I was hoping not to go that long. But every time I pick it up, I just can't move past at the moment. I'm struggling to move past what to do next. I'm happy to keep stitching here. I'll finish that because I know where I want to go and what I want to do with that piece. That's fine. But I'm not quite sure where to go next. I feel like I want to do more of this weave stitch. I like how that's pushing forward this embroidery and making that pop, but I don't think I want to leave that open without weave stitch around there because it doesn't look right to me. But on the other hand, I don't want to just put weave stitch around here and then just have it look like a big blob of weave stitch in the greens. So do I bring the weave stitch over through here a bit more, or should I just do it around here and then put some in here to anchor it a bit more, balance it all out a bit more? Personally, I don't really want to do that much work. I didn't want to do this much work in the first place, but it's just kept evolving. The more I've stitched, the more it's evolved, the more it's felt like it's needed more stitches here and more stitches there and more texture and more detail, which is okay. But yeah, I just feel a bit lost in this area at the moment. As much as I'm saying I want to do a bit more weave stitch, I keep telling myself I'd prefer to either put some more layers, either some laces or some fabrics, or some different stitches. And then the other thing I've considered is doing some stitched like tendrils or leaves or little flowers up in here a bit. This is why this one's here. It was the start of a flower spray or something. You know, I'm trying to show the movement that I'm thinking in my head. It's probably looking a bit ridiculous because I know what I'm thinking, but trying to express that visually, it may not be coming through to you the same way. So after all that, the main thing is I haven't neglected this piece. I haven't forgotten about it. I know I have been touting it as a stitch along for you guys to join in. I just feel like I still have to come back with fresh eyes again. I'm still not inspired, or I still haven't got that, what's the word, the urge isn't right. I still haven't quite worked out what steps I want to take next. So after all that, I'm just, yeah, it's just going to go away again a bit longer. I mean, I might pull it out tonight or tomorrow and go, that's what I'll do. And, you know, I don't know what inspires me sometimes. Sometimes I can sit down and do a whole piece in one hit, not give it any thought. It just all falls in place. That often happens for me now. Maybe because I've been stitching and creating for most of my life. A lot of the time, my pieces just fall together without any effort. Occasionally this happens, and I probably overthink it, to be honest. That's probably my major block. I overthink it. So she's just going away for a while after all that. We haven't forgotten her. Now I'll keep my little stitch book close because I've also got, where did I put that? That's that one. I've got another one here. So I've also wanted to get started on some needle books. What did I do with the third one? Once again, I thought I had it all here. There it is. I did have it all organised in front of me. I just couldn't see it under my nose. Okay, so since yesterday, I finally made the plunge to start getting some needle books in order to create, because I need to get some things up in my Made It store. It's empty at the moment. So I have started with, this has just come undone. I'm trying to fix it before I end up with it all tangled. I've got a piece of this brushed cotton, this vintage brushed cotton that I've shown before. This is a piece I bought at my friend's shop last week or the week before. I've cut a piece to make a needle book. I have put some Pellon behind it. So this, I believe, from memory, I had a box. I don't have much left. I used to work in a quilt store, and sometimes I used to ask our customers if they didn't want their offcuts from when we quilted the quilt on the gamel. I'd ask them, or they'd offer the offcuts. They'd say, I don't want that, can you use that? Sometimes I had bits this wide. Sometimes some of the pieces were 1 metre wide. So I got to bring those bits home, and this is some of the bits that are left that I'm using still. So this, I believe, is a piece of bamboo wadding, this one, that we used in someone's quilt. So I've just put that on the back. If you look closely, you might see it better on this one. Yeah, maybe not. Yeah, maybe here. I took the time, not last night, the night before, to baste the fabric to the Pellon. So I started at the middle. I'll pull this out. I'll use this so hopefully you can see. So this piece, this needs to be trimmed again. It's not exactly square. The piece of printed brushed cotton I originally cut square, but as you're working it, putting the stitches in it and working it on the Pellon, it starts to distort and stretch a bit. So I should have cut it a little bit larger than what I wanted. I don't think it's drawn in. It usually stretches out a little bit, a fraction, maybe 5 mil in total in each direction. So what I did, I started with the layers, and every time I do something else, I think I'll show you from scratch, and then I get a bit enthusiastic at night when I should be sleeping and start it. So you miss out on some of it. Maybe I can show you. Did I bring it out here? I did. So maybe I can show you. Okay. Here's a bit of scrap Pellon. So this is the piece I cut the other two pieces off yesterday. It's got bits of cotton stuck on it still from the quilt we quilted back then. You can see this piece here. It's had a stitch run through it along here, which would have been our basting stitch for when I wound it onto the gamble machine. So this is just an off-cut scrap piece of, I'm pretty sure this is a bamboo Pellon or wadding. It's not a very thick one. It's quite a few years old. It's been probably at least 9-10 years, maybe longer, since I've worked in the quilt store, so it's not a new quality fabric, Pellon. Now, I hadn't planned on showing you this from scratch when I got all this set up earlier, so I've got to dig a little bit for a bit of fabric. So bear with me again. But I think it would be good to be able to show you all the steps, because I have been getting quite a few questions, and I realised that, and I learned this a few years ago when I did start teaching, I take some of the steps for granted, and I apologise for that. I jump in sometimes. I do things because it's just comes automatically to me now. So sometimes I forget to show you which steps I take to get to the finished product. So I'm trying to be much more aware of, you know, remembering to show you guys. Oh, that's the wrong darn bit. They're the offcuts, not the... Please bear with me a little bit longer. I haven't got the correct pieces. Oh, I just sat down, sorry, my joints are very stiff. So that was a little bit of a challenge. Oh. Okay, so I've got some pre-cut pieces of fabric to do these needle books. I can't decide which colour to do. Personally I think that's a bit dark. It's got a black background. I think it's a little bit dark. I can use one of these. These are I knew earlier. Crikey. I'll have a look here. I've got a piece in front of me with the brand written on it. It is a piece of Sanderson. This is Sanderson. These guys. So let's do one of those, hey? That's a cute piece. There's a bit of floral up there and a bit of blue on there. The other one's got a mark on it. So let's start from scratch. This is what I've done to this piece and this piece that I'll be using for a needle book. Piece of fabric, cut to size. I should have cut it a fraction bigger, but that's okay. A piece of Pellon. Lay the Pellon on the fabric on the Pellon. Now the other two pieces I didn't have this much allowance around with the Pellon, but because there's not much left, I'm not going to trim it back. I don't need to yet. So I'm just making sure this is pressed down onto that. I'll probably take it a bit too far, but I like to, can you see here there's a ridge there where I folded it. So I want to make sure that's sitting flat. What I'm going to do now though is fold this in half that way and just finger press the middle there. Now, this isn't necessary. I probably go a bit too overboard, but this is what I like to do. I press that in the middle, try and get this to press in the opposite direction just because it's easier for me to see. So I finger press that junction in the middle there. Now what I do is I've got it here, a piece of sewing thread, just because this is what I have on hand. This particular one's a cheap cotton, so I don't feel like I'm wasting anything good. Just a cheap machine thread. Pull some of that out. Thread her up on a needle. I don't need a big chunky needle. They're all tucked away in here. I haven't got these in like they probably should. Oh, that one's a bit bent. There's another little one. Some of these are already threaded, some of them are like crowbars. That's a bit big, but that'll do for this purpose. So threading the needle, I can see there's a bit of fluff on the end of that cotton, so that's going to make it challenging to thread. And I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see very well. Now, I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. There's a couple of ways that I know of to thread a needle. You can use a needle threader. I try not to, simply because I feel like if I'm threading it without the needle threader, I'm exercising my brain a bit more. I'm stretching that muscle power and, you know, brain power and muscle memory. So this is one way to thread the eye of the needle with the thread. You're probably all familiar with that. This guy doesn't want to go in. Okay, there we go. Now, the other thing I want to say is, if you're trying to thread a needle and the thread won't go in, turn the eye of the needle around, because needles do have a front and a back. When needles are manufactured, this piece of metal will be laying down, or I think they actually stand up. I have watched a video on it, it's quite interesting. And they're stamped with a punch. So the front, where the punch goes through to make the eye, that's the front of the needle. It's nice and round and open. And then the back of the needle, you'd have to put it under a microscope to see correctly, is slightly squared off a bit more, so it's not as easy for that cotton to slide through. So if you're sitting there for ages thinking, why won't it go in? I'm really struggling, this is ridiculous. Turn the needle around so you're working on the other side of the eye, and most of the time it'll go straight in. The other thing you can do, and it might not work with this really fine cotton, I usually use it on wool mainly, is instead of threading your needle, you can needle your thread. So what you do is lay your thread down, lay your needle on top of the thread, and again, this is difficult being this small, and it may not work because I've got a tiny bit of cotton and a tiny eye. It's easier with thicker threads and bigger eyes, but I'll see if I can show you. So this is needling the thread. What you want to do is fold the thread over the needle and pinch it. So I'm just pinching the thread, fold it over. I sort of pull the needle up slightly to make sure that's nice and tight in there. I've dropped it, sorry. I hope this all makes sense. So I've folded the thread over the needle, and then I pinch it between my thumb and forefinger, making sure that's nice and firm. Then I pull the needle out while still pinching that. Just waiting for that bike to go past. And then I slightly sort of just prime my thumb and forefinger apart gently so I can just see that thread there. Then you get your needle and you work the eye down and I missed it. See, this, I didn't think it would work. It's too small. The eye's too small and the thread's too small. So pinch that thread, and if it was chunkier, what you actually do, I can see where that thread is, pinch, squeeze them, roll my thumb and forefinger out so I can see where that thread is. And then what you'd normally do if it was bigger thread and bigger needle, you sort of just wiggle it like this while you're still pinching the thread. Maybe I can find a bigger one to actually show you how it works. Okay, there's a bigger eye. And then I don't have any of my wool out here. Let's see if this might be too chunky. It's okay. Okay, let's see if this one will work, just to show you. It's okay. It's okay. Can you please stop yelling? You're very loud and you're hurting our ears. Okay? It's okay. It's just the car down the back. You can go and lay down now. Okay, here we go. This is a bit of cotton, a thicker bit of cotton. Again, it might be too chunky for this to work. I fold it over the needle, pinch it between my fingers, and then wiggle the needle. If you keep, you've got to sort of keep pinching. It's a bit of a technique. Yeah, it won't. It's too chunky. I apologise. Here I am telling you, this is the other way to thread a needle, and I can't get it to work. Let's try this. You'll learn, you know, this is a big eye. So this is pretty well a chenille or a tapestry. And it would work really well with my chenille wool. That's what I usually do this technique with. This is another piece of cotton. This is a Pearl 8, so it's a bit thinner. This might be successful. Again, we just jiggle the needle, so sort of rocking it. It's going to make a liar out of me today. Usually I can get this first go. So I'm just rocking the needle while still pinching, because you want to pinch when it comes out the other side. Now normally you'd just rock, and then when you pull your fingers away, the needle has threaded the thread, so you're needling the thread. Next time I will get the correct materials, the correct needle and the chenille wool, and I'll show you how it works effectively. But anyway, now that I've wasted all your time trying to explain how you can needle a thread, let's get back to the task at hand. Let's put that needle back so I don't lose it. That was a crowbar, that one. Let's get our basting cotton. This is our inexpensive sewing cotton. This looks like this car. I'm sure you can hear that, a car alarm. It's been doing that for 4 days. So this sewing thread looks like one that you might have been able to buy at Kmart in the 80s or 90s or something. So either someone's given it to me or I've picked it up at the second-hand store. I don't like to use my good Gutermann or Metler for doing the tacking because it just seems like a waste to me. I'm just putting a knot on the end of this cotton, nothing fancy. I'm just, you know. Now back to here, where I pressed that cross in the center of this fabric is where I start. I want to come in with the needle about the center of that, and then I'm just going to do some work from the center out towards the side. You can follow if you wanted to do that fold all the way through, which would probably be helpful. There's that blinking alarm again. If you're a bit pedantic like me, you can follow that fold to do your tacking stitch or basting stitch. Don't pull it too tight like I sometimes do. Now these are probably On a piece this size, I don't do huge tacking stitches. I was just looking for my ruler to measure it to give you an idea. They're not an inch, they're not that far apart. So what have we got? They're about 1/2 inch, these stitches at the moment that I'm doing. So again, just working from the center out, making sure that this all lies nice and flat. And again, a lot of people don't do this, and to be honest, it's not necessary, but I like to do it to make sure my fabric's not going to pucker as I'm doing my running stitches or embroidery over the top. Now just do these tacking stitches. I get to this edge, I turn, and I'm coming. This is just my technique. And now I'm going to work back in the opposite direction, approximately 1/2 inch away from the last line I did. You know, it doesn't matter if it's closer, it doesn't matter if it's further apart. I like relatively close tacking stitches or basting stitches because then I feel like I've got more control. I also sometimes pull them out as I'm going. If they're in my road, I pull them out as I'm going. So as I'm pulling them out, I'm only pulling them out where I'm putting my permanent stitches. So those then permanent stitches will then hold what I pulled out. So the ones around it, I stay there until I'm finished. I leave there, if that makes sense. So again, I'm just coming back to the other side now. This piece here, so we started in the center and worked out that way. From that center point out, we haven't worked yet. That's okay. I try and keep these relatively straight, but you know, you don't have to measure. It's not a big deal because these will be coming out. I actually did it a bit differently on the other ones. I didn't go all the way up to here. I came here and did a big rectangle, but that's okay. I forgot. So I'm turning. Now I'm going to come back up on that line above that we didn't stitch, back towards that center where we started. And again, it doesn't matter what order you do it, but it's important to start from the center and work outwards. The reason you do that is because from that center point and working outwards, your fabric is more likely to stay flat. If I was to stitch a bit here and then come in from this end, without even realizing it, no matter how much I've pulled it flat, if I work from opposite sides towards the center, the fabric will push up like that. Not that noticeably, but you will get your fabric push up towards the center. So you work from the center outwards every time to make sure you've got a nice piece of flatly basted fabric. So I'm just sort of doing a diagonal across here now and coming back, and again, I don't always do this particular pattern. The ones I did this morning, I started here and worked in a spiral. I was still working outwards, sort of a rectangle actually. And keep tacking these down. And again, these are approximately 1/2 inch apart on the piece this size. I'm turning, I'm coming back this. See, I just noticed then that has pushed up. So I'm just going to smooth it out a bit. And what you should do, what I was taught to do, is start here with your knot like I did, work out to this edge, do a holding stitch. I should do that to show you how to do it correctly. I'll go back and do that. I won't do all of it, I'll just pull this bit out and show you how it should be done. Just threading my needle again. So when I get to the end, I'm just going to do a holding stitch, and that's so I come up like that and then just do one in about the same spot again. That's it. Now snip that off, bit of a tail, then we put another knot in our cotton. Now remember where I said to you I'd done the diagonal stitch to here, so I've come from here to here, so I've worked from the center out. Now how we should be doing it is we started here with a knot, we work out, do a holding stitch, come back here with a knot, work out, do a holding stitch, move up, start here with a knot, work out, do a holding stitch, and keep doing it that way. You can go there, there, and then there, there. I might do that, hey? Then it will well and truly be nice and flat. So from here, I've got a holding stitch here. I'll come in with a knot just under that, and I'll work downwards. Try and follow that folded line I did earlier. Get to the end, and I'm just doing a 1 stitch, 2 stitch around the same spot, and 3 around the same spot. Just snip it off. Now again, all those stitches are just about 1/2 inch approximately. Not exactly in the same holes, that's not that important, but around there, just in the same spot. Now we'll put a knot in this bit of cotton, turn it around, start at this center point here, and again follow that centered line, folded line down, and I'm just doing my approximate 1/2 inch basting stitch or tacking stitch. Here's my last stitch. You can see the needle there. Pull that through. Now I come over the same spot again, and then one more time, and that's my holding stitch. Snip that off. I need to get another length of cotton. Go back to our inexpensive machine thread. These pieces I'm cutting off in theory shouldn't be cut this long. Your working piece should only be about 1 foot long from your fingers to your elbow. It doesn't matter too much with this tacking thread because it's not going to fatigue like your working thread would, but it has potential to get knotted. So a shorter piece of thread, no matter what kind of thread it is, wool, cotton, silk, should in theory only be short, so it doesn't knot and it doesn't fatigue. Okay, so I've worked from here out. I've got a couple of other lines there that we did because I wasn't paying attention. We've worked from the center outwards in this direction. Now we'll come back. I've got a line here, a line here, a line through the center, and then I've got a line here, but I haven't done here yet. So let's go there next. Start again in the center. See, this is exactly what I mean. I've got a knot there now because this thread's too long. Again, roughly following that center fold line that I did earlier. Now, as I said earlier, this is not necessary. This is how I've been taught to stitch. This is a technique that I prefer because I get a nice, flat, evenly stitched piece of work at the end. Yes, it takes a lot of work. Yes, it's time consuming, but I'm less likely to have to undo or unpick. And there's much less chance of me ending up with puckered fabric, rippled fabric, and things like that. Okay, now I'm going to come, here's where I've stitched down the center. I'm going to come beside that. That's the last one we've done in that direction. So I'm sitting right there on that line. I'll come in half an inch away from this direction, and I'm going to go, that just went straight into the back of my thumb, that needle. And I'm coming down in this direction this time. And again, I'm going to do my holding stitch. 1, 2, 3. We want to do all of this stitching firmly, but not tight enough that we're going to pull it or pucker the fabric. But we want it as firm as we can get it without that happening. Another knot. Now this time I'm going to go, that stitch I've just done there, I'm going to go diagonally opposite over here. Put my needle in, approximately half an inch away from this center line we've already done, and again approximately ½ inch tacking stitches to the edge. We get to the edge, we do our first stitch, our second stitch in this approximately the same spot, and then our third stitch in the same spot again. And that's our holding stitch, cut it off. Now we want, I'm just trying to find the tail, they're the same length. Now I'm licking my finger, which probably isn't healthy, and it's not the best technique, but for this particular tacking stitch, that's quite sufficient. Licking my finger, laying my thread on it, wrapping it around once, overlapping that cotton, then I'm just rolling it with my thumb and forefinger and then pulling it down to cause that to make a knot. Now turn it around again. We're coming in on the opposite side here now. Again, right on that line that we stitched in that direction last, doing our tacking stitches down to the edge, and then our holding stitch. 1, 2, 3. Snip it off. This one I haven't done yet, so I don't know if you can see that. We've got, so far, we've got our center line through here, and then there's 2 either side of that. We haven't done this section here. So our center line, 1 on this side, 1 on this side. That's because we're working from the center outwards each time. We've got our 3 in this direction already, 1 through the center and 1 either side. And again, we've worked those from the center out on each occasion. And we've got our lazy knot, or some people call it the dirty girl knot because you spit on your finger. Okay, we're starting from the center again and working outwards, making sure all that fabric and that basting is nice and flat as you go. Our last stitch, and 1, 2, 3 for our holding stitch. Snip it off. Now this time we've only got, again, I'm just making sure it's all nice and flat. We've only got these corners now to do, so I should be able to change my technique. So I'll come in here next to this last line we've done, and I'm working outwards again on the longest side. And because there's not a huge amount of surface area left, And this fabric's already starting to get the hint that we want it to lay flat. When I get to this edge here, I'm going to put the needle in and turn. So I've done a 90-degree turn here. Turn my fabric so I'm working with the fabric, and I'm going to come from the edge back towards the center. Goodness me. These noisy vehicles have only entered the neighbourhood in the last few weeks. Okay, now this doesn't always work. It's just because we've got a smaller surface area and it's less likely to start to pucker now. You can continue to work from the centre out if you feel more comfortable, but I've done this many times now. I can pretty well keep an eye on it. Working back towards the centre, and then when I get back up near that line, now I'm in theory about ½ an inch away from that last line, and I'm going to turn again. So across ½ an inch, and I'm going to work back outwards. So I'm essentially doing this pattern now. Come back out to that edge. Again, as I said, if you're not confident enough to keep your fabric nice and flat, you're more than welcome to keep working from the centre out, which is how it should be done. But you start to get a feel of it, you get the hang of it, and you start to learn that you can keep those corners flat when you don't have as much. As long as you bring it out from the centre in each direction. And as I said, this isn't a huge amount of surface area left to stitch. Turning again, I'm running out of cotton, so I will have to rethread. I'm just going to run this through like that because it's the end of the thread, and I can pull that through and leave that tail there now. Pat it out, get some more thread. Oh, my feet have gone numb standing up here. For anyone who may have listened to yesterday's video, yesterday? No, it was the day before, I haven't updated you. Yesterday, my ex-husband asked me to go with him to the RSPCA with his dog. To cut a long story short, she had started whelping, but the puppies weren't coming. We took her to the vet on the Saturday. She'd already been going since Thursday night. I kept saying to him, I think she needs to go to the vet. I'm concerned the puppies are too big and they're stuck. We got her to the vet on Saturday morning. The vet inspected her, and I'm going to do another holding stitch here now because I've gotten to the edge of that centre line. The vet inspected her and said they used an ultrasound and they could see at least one puppy. There might have been two. They picked up a nice, strong, healthy little heartbeat and were confident that there was a nice, healthy little pup inside. Okay, I'm going to come diagonally opposite now to do this corner to keep it balanced. If I do them on the same sides, it could potentially skew the fabric, what's left. So I'm going to do diagonally opposite. It helps balance it better. So the vet ended up explaining that she was on her own. She needed another veterinarian to be able to do an emergency cesarean, which needed to be done. But they were not able to do it because they were short-staffed. She then said that we should take her to the RSPCA. They had the staff and the facilities apparently to do the emergency surgery, but they closed at midday, and it was 10 minutes to midday, and the drive was an hour away. We would not have made it. So as we were sitting, we pulled over on the side of the road. I started Googling any other vets that may have still been open. We found one about another hour's drive away in the opposite direction that was open till 4. So we took her down there. They inspected her. They read the note from the last vet. They agreed that she needed an emergency cesarean immediately. They too could only find one puppy and one heartbeat. Goodness me. But they were a large animal hospital, the second one. They too only had one vet on duty. They too said they needed 2 to do the emergency surgery. They didn't have any available. They could monitor her until 4 p.m. that day, but then we'd just have to take her home. So essentially, there wasn't much we could do, and I was very frustrated and upset. When I worked in the veterinary field years ago, we used to call staff in and get the surgery done. Apparently not anymore. So my ex-husband took her back home. I gave him the vet and I both gave him some instructions on what to look for, how to care for her. And the first vet did give her an injection to try and induce labour. It didn't work. So all we could do at that stage was take her home. Doing my holding stitch now, I've come to the end. Take her home, make her comfortable, and hope that everything just remained the same. She wasn't stressed. The puppy allegedly wasn't stressed. Even though she had started labour, they were confident that if everything stayed the way it was, she'd be okay. I was not as confident. I was concerned that she had a puppy stuck in the birth canal. I assumed because they could only find one that it was a very large puppy and it was stuck. I was also concerned that if this went on Saturday night and all day Sunday until Monday morning, they did book us in, the second vet booked us in for emergency surgery on Monday, first thing Monday morning, 9 a.m. I was concerned that she would go septic, but our hands were tied. There was nothing else we could do. So first thing yesterday morning, we rang the second vet and informed them we wouldn't be taking her there for surgery because we decided to take her to the RSPCA because they're a much larger facility. They have more equipment. They're just more readily equipped. So we drove her up there. We didn't have an appointment because we just wanted to get her seen to. She was still, nothing had happened, changed that we were aware of, but I was still very concerned about her well-being. We got her to the RSPCA. As we lifted her out of the car, she hemorrhaged. And I knew straight away. Walked her in, explained to them what had happened. We handed them the note from the first vet. They were quite upset and angry that we had been turned away twice on Saturday. They initially said that they didn't have any vacancies to operate on her yesterday, and then as soon as they realised she'd hemorrhaged, it took them 60 seconds to turn around and say, we've got a team together, we can operate immediately. So they shuffled all their other appointments and they got her in straight away. thank goodness. Explained to us that she was septic, which I suspected. She had a nasty infection. She's 9 years old. It's her first litter. A dog actually ripped the palings off a couple of months ago and got to her. I also was concerned about her age. They explained that there was a very big chance that she would arrest on the table, which I was aware of. We decided to go ahead. They asked my ex-husband if he wanted to sign a resuscitation order. So if she did arrest, did he want them to take every step necessary to resuscitate? He said yes. So he signed that resus order. Then we were asked to stay close by in case anything happened, so they could call him in essentially to say goodbye. So we stayed up there all day waiting to hear. And then she went in it was about 9:15, I think, by the time they got her in. They contacted him about 1 o'clock to say that she was in recovery. She had done really well. There were 4 puppies. They were all deceased. 3 of them were very large. And what I had thought had happened is exactly what had happened. The first puppy off the rank that tried to exit through the birth canal had gotten stuck. And it looks like the other 3 puppies that they didn't detect the other day, it looks like they were already deceased. So the poor girl had all these puppies in her all that time. But now she's had the surgery, she had the cesarean, she's had her ovaries and her uterus removed, so she's been spayed. She's been microchipped, she's been vaccinated, she's got antibiotics on board, she's getting regular painkillers, and she had her ear tattooed, which is new to me. I didn't know that one. They tattooed her ear, which apparently is a quick and easy way for the ranger or the vet to see that she has been chipped. And she's now at home resting, thank goodness. So all in all, I guess it was a good outcome. She's healthy, she's happy, she's at home, she's recovering. They did lose the puppies, but she's okay. So that was my day yesterday and Saturday. Not what I expected, but if I hadn't have gone with my ex-husband to support him, and he isn't as knowledgeable as I am about the veterinary scene, he was very distraught as well. If I hadn't have gone, our son would have missed work to go, and he can't afford to miss work at the moment, so I said I'd go, and everything turned out okay in the end, thank goodness. So I've almost finished this basting. I'm going to run out of thread before I get that last bit done. And I will finish it off. I won't leave that bit flapping, because when it comes time for me to stitch that, it could move. That has happened to me in the past. I haven't tacked it all down, and especially the edges. They fold over while you're stitching sometimes, and you end up sewing them where they shouldn't be. And so I take the time to do it properly, do it all, finish this bit off, turn the corner, come along this edge. Now what I'm also going to do is go all the way around the outside, because I've got anywhere from 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch on the edge here that hasn't been stitched down. So I'm just going to do one last round. Again, not necessary, but I'm just going to try and come in approximately 1/4 inch and tack these edges down in place, just so they're less likely to curl or roll or get caught up in another stitch that I might be doing. And then once we've gone around the outside, that piece of fabric has been basted or tacked to that Pellon. Now the other thing you can do is buy iron-on Pellon, which I do sometimes, and you can just iron it on, so you don't have to do this. But I've had this there and I wanted to use it, so it's not been wasted, and I'm not spending money unnecessarily on more products that I don't necessarily need. So again, as I said earlier, yes, this is time consuming. Yes, it can get a bit fiddly, but it's worth it. You're much less likely to get puckered fabric. You're much less likely to get rolled edges that you might pick up in a stitch you don't want to pick them up in. And in the end, you end up with a better finish, I think, if you're that way inclined. Some people deliberately go for the puckered fabric and the tatty edges, and I mean, I do sometimes, depending on what I'm doing. I've got a completely different style that I do with upcycled textiles that I eco dye or indigo dye, which is pretty much eco dye anyway if I've got true indigo. And I like a lot of rust on those pieces, and I like the torn edges, and I try to very consciously do very rustic stitches on those pieces. These pieces are almost the opposite for me in my mind. They're much more precise and considered, and I guess a bit more traditional in a sense that I try and do more traditional stitching and neater stitching and whatnot, if that makes sense. And when I say if that makes sense, I'm not asking that assuming you don't understand. I'm asking that assuming that I may not be verbalizing my thoughts clearly. Sometimes I feel like I'm not explaining my thoughts well. So no offense to any of you. It's me. Okay, this is the last bit, and again I'm going to do another one of those holding stitches. 1, 2, 3, and we're done. So that's all nice and neatly basted down, so it won't roll, it won't pucker. It looks puckered here, but it's nice and flat. There's no folds, there's no rolls, and normally I would have pressed this as well. I did press it yesterday, but carrying it around in my bag, it's crumpled it all a bit. So I like to make sure it's nice and pressed. Depending on what fabric it is, some of these lighter cottons or linens, I will even starch the back to give it a little bit of body before I tack it down. Now that is almost ready to start stitching. Now I've got another little trick here that I use. I often have people ask me, firstly, how I get it so nice and flat and neat. That's one trick. The second one, if I can find it, where have I put it? I had trouble finding this last night. Fiddlesticks. Somewhere I have a... Here it is. Here's my pen. And now I know I picked up that ruler because I made a point of picking out. I'll use this one instead, I can see better. So remember where we did that fold in the center? We had a cross there. I'm going to come back and just mark that with a dot so I can see where it is, or a cross. Now this is, I used to buy the fabric markers, the dissolvable. You used to buy a fabric marker and then you'd get another pen marker thing that was almost like a felt tipped eraser, and you would go over it and rub it out. I worked out some years ago when I was still learning embroidery that these friction pens will iron off. So the fabric markers I was using back in the day would cost me nearly $30 for the marker and the eraser. And that's a lot of money for me. It's probably a lot of money for most of us, to be honest. I don't know how much they are these days. I haven't looked. But at the time I could buy these friction pens for about $2 each at Kmart. So I'd go and buy 5 at a time. I bought this packet, I bought a packet of 3 at Woolworths a couple of months ago because that was the only shop I could get to at the time. And it cost me $10 for 3, so about $3.33 a pen. I'm sure you could probably get them cheaper. Then what I do, I'm lining up my rule so it's nice and square on the fabric. It might be a bit hard for you to see. It's nice and square. I've got it right on that center line. And again, you do not have to be this accurate. This is how I like to do it. I've got this bottom edge square with my rule on the fabric, not on the Pellon or the wadding. I've squared it off on the fabric because I know that piece of fabric's square because I had squared it off earlier. And I'm going to use my friction pen and draw a line across my fabric. Then with my ruler I'm going to come up, I usually come up 1/2 inch, but these are because these are smaller, 1/4 inch is too small. Let's just go 1/8 inch. Let's go 1/4 inch. So I line that up 1/4 inch away and draw another line. That's a little bit too wide for my liking on this size piece of fabric, but that will do. It's not too bad actually. That will do us today. So I'm going to draw my lines all the way up here at 1/4 inch. And this, when people say to me, how did you get your running stitched lines so straight? And they're not that straight, honestly. If you look at the ones I did last night, I'll show you later, they're not that straight. But this is how I get them relatively straight. I have a bit of a cheat code, I guess. I know some of my friends will not use these pens. They're afraid that either they won't iron off or they will come back years later with a shadow mark. So far I've never had that happen. I've been using them for about 10 years, I guess. I haven't had a shadow mark come back yet. And yet with the proper fabric markers I used to use, I'm now starting to get shadow marks come up on some of those first ones I did. The first markers. The more modern ones probably don't do that because they'd probably likely be a different formula now. So draw my lines in, and then while you're doing this, just be aware, don't forget we've done all our basting stitches on there. So just be aware that you're not ripping them out as you're drawing your lines. Now I've just noticed something else. I've been squaring up against each consecutive line, okay? But I've just noticed I'm losing my original lines. So what I'm doing here now is squaring up off my first line, pushed it a little bit over there, but then I'm going to come and, I should have done that all along. Again, my next line, so I'm lining this one up a 1/4 inch away from the last one I just did, but I've also got to check down here and make sure it's squared up against my original line. So this original line's squared off. The last 1/4 inch line I just did is squared off against the next line. That's just something to be aware of. If you don't keep an eye on your original line, even though you're squaring it up exactly on your most previous line, it tends to walk. So but the further you get away, you'll end up a whole 1/4 inch away at the end, if that makes sense. So I don't think I can fit another 1/4 inch in there. No. Okay, we've got those ones done. Flip it around, and now we go the other direction. Again, I'm squaring that up against that original center line, a 1/4 inch away. Draw our line. Move to the next one. I'm squaring it off against that line I just drew, but I'm also checking to make sure it's squared off against my original. So I've got to shimmy that down a little bit, because if I square that off against that last one, even though the next one, the original one's only 1 line away, it wasn't squared with it. So I'm squaring it against that original line. Again, a 1/4 inch away against that line we've just drawn, double checking and make sure that it's still square against that original center line, and we're good to go. Making sure we're not tearing out those tacking stitches with the pen as we're drawing. Again, squaring off against that line we've just drawn, double checking our original center line here. Yep, it's all square, not like the last side I did. Next one, squaring off against that last line, double checking our original center line. It's got to come down a hair. There we go, we're right now. Next one, I know this is a bit laborious, guys. Thanks for sticking with me. Squaring off against that line we've just drawn. Now here's my original center line, because I can see that dot through the ruler, and you might be able to see it's not quite square. I need to come down a hair. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So now that original center line looks square to me. That line that we've just drawn looks square. I'm happy to go. Next one, that looks square up here. Double checking that original line. This left side has to come down a fraction. Happy to go. Next one, square off against that line we've just done. Double check our original line. Now that's not sitting square. This left side needs to come down a hair again. This line here. Now that one's square, ready to go. Next one, I've squared off against that last line. Double check our original center line. That looks pretty square. Oh, that left side has to come down a fraction again. Just a hair's width. Double check it's still square up here, and we're ready to go. Next one, square it off against that last line. Double check our original center line. Again, that left side has to come down a hair. Looks okay to me. Double check this line again. Let's go. One more. Square it up. Double check our center line. That looks quite square to me. And we're done. Okay, what's next, I hear you ask? This live's going for a long time. I hope it uploads when I upload it. I hope I haven't bored you guys silly. We've done our basting. We've drawn our lines. Now we want to get something to stitch. I'm going to do the running stitch on this one as well. So I've started these two yesterday and last night. I forgot to draw lines on this. This was my first piece. And if you look closely, this is a lovely piece of vintage bark cloth. It's not very straight. That stitching's not as straight as I would like it. It's not horrendous. And the reason is that it's not too bad is because I actually started to follow the grain of the fabric. So I tried to put my stitches in the grain to help use that to keep a level eye line as I was stitching with that one. This one, I've drawn the lines. Even though I've drawn the lines, you probably see up there, they're still not exactly straight. I still have trouble to keep my stitches straight. Once I iron this and that pen mark disappears, it won't be as prominent. So now I want to find something to stitch with. I like to usually, when I'm doing my running stitch on something like this, I like to use something a bit heavier, like a Pearl 8 or a crochet cotton. So I've got down here a bucket of vintage crochet cottons. This isn't all of them, I've got others. I thought I wanted to do, there's a little spider. I thought I wanted to do yellow on that, but now I'm starting to think it might be a bit too bright. I do have a oh, that car, my goodness. I just found a lemon that looks a similar colour to the fabric, but when I turned it over, it's quite grubby on that side. I don't know what's happened there. Something's been spilled on it by the looks. And as I said, most of these have either been gifted to me. There were some that were my grandmother's, some were my ex-mother-in-law's. A lot of them I've picked up at second-hand stores. This one's a candle wicking cotton. It's not too bad a colour, but it's quite fine actually. Candle wicking cotton I've used previously has been a bit thicker than that. I could go for a variegated pink that almost matches the flowers. I could go for a variegated blue. Actually don't think I mind that. I think I might use that blue. I've got a plain blue. It's a bit grubby too. I think I like that blue, that variegated one. I've got ecru, I've got beige, I've got different pinks, I've got an aqua blue, red, mauve. I think I like that one. I've got another couple in here that are a different colour again, but let's go this one, shall we? This is a The label's fallen off. This is the same one, same variegated colour. They'd both be around the same age. This one still has the label, so I'm going to push it through so you can... I'm going to take it out so you can see it. This particular one is a Coats chain cotton, made in Germany. It's a size 20 crochet cotton. So it's quite heavily mercerized, which is the twist in it. That's not going to come untwisted in a hurry. And that's one of the reasons I like it. It's a nice, strong, firm thread, a bit like a top thread, but a bit thicker. So again, I'm pulling off much more than I should in theory. 1, 2, 3, at least 3 foot. Sometimes you don't want to go much longer than that because then it gets really out of control. I need to find a needle. Now, you can use a Shishiko needle to do this. It's a nice long needle. I don't have mine on hand. I don't know where I've put them. I've put them away in a safe spot because they're a bit precious to me, my little Shishikos. I'll use this crowbar instead. This is a bit big. It's a bit thick, but it's a nice length. It may be problematic because it's so thick. When you choose your needle, you want your needle to be able to push through the fabric easily. And the idea is the eye of the needle with the thread in it pushes the fabric open enough that you can easily pull your thread through, but it doesn't leave a big mark in your fabric. So I don't know if you saw there's a slight mark left behind. That's because this is a little bit too big for this fabric. This is a upholstery fabric, a Sanderson upholstery. So it's a little bit heavier. It's almost canvas-like, not quite that heavy. So I can get away with this bigger needle. I'd prefer something a little bit smaller, but I don't have anything on hand. Now, how I start this bit, I'm going to do a quilter's knot. And again, it's probably of no consequence what kind of knot we use. I like a quilter's knot because it's quite compact. A lot of my stitching, I try not to use any knots. So the tacking stitches we did, those knots are going to come out, so it doesn't matter. But for this, I'm going to use a quilter's knot. If you don't know how to do a quilter's knot, I've threaded my needle. I've got a long tail and my short side, my working side of the thread. So this is my tail, my thread tail. I bring my needle pointing towards the center of where I'm looking, and I get my tail and I bring it towards my needle. They both come together like this. I lay my thread on top of my needle and I hold it in place with my dominant hand, and I do 1, 2, 3, 4 wraps. Now those wraps I've just done, I'm pinching with my thumb and forefinger. I'm going to hold them. I don't want to hold them too firmly that I can't pull the needle through. Just enough that I can still pull this needle through. Keep pinching those wraps until you get to the end, and then you end up with this. Now you can pull that tail and firm that up, and there's your quilter's knot. Now we're going to start in the center again. Either come slightly beside that original knot, basting knot you've done, or cut it out of the way. I'm coming up from the back and okay, now a lot of people will do what is more commonly known as a Shishiko stitch, and that is to come in next to where you've just come up about an eighth of an inch away, I guess, for my liking. Some people go half an inch long. I like nice close ones. And now you're actually working the thread and the needle up and down through the fabric like this until you fill the needle, and then you pull the needle through. That's pretty much a sashiko stitch. I personally don't like to use that, and there's a couple of reasons why. The first reason is because I struggle to get all the fabric on there, especially with this needle. This is too chunky. If I had a finer needle, it would be a lot easier. The second reason is, for me personally, I'm going to put my glasses on because this is where I need them. If I do that stitch where I keep the needle and the thread that I just showed you, that I didn't pull through, I didn't finish that thread because I don't like that technique myself for this, I struggle to keep it on the line when I do that. So I like to, and again, this is more time consuming and it's laborious, but I like the look of the stitch better. So I do one stitch at a time. Sometimes, if I'm feeling confident enough that I can keep it straight, I will do it like this way. Again, about an eighth of an inch away, and then I'll just come up like this. This gets a little bit more efficient doing it this way. But what I find for me doing it this way, and you may not have this issue, this is my problem I encounter. When I do it this way, even though I look here and I go, okay, that's about an eighth of an inch away, I come in and then I try and come up an eighth of an inch away. What I find is either, that one's actually turned out longer. My top stitch usually ends up shorter than what I think it is, and my bottom stitch usually ends up longer. So I end up with bigger gaps and irregular stitches. So then I come back to just doing one stitch at a time. And this is not easy to see with the blue on the blue. So I might just switch over to one of the other pieces. It might be a bit easier for you to see. Maybe the pink, that looks like it stands out a little bit more. It might not. It's hard to tell. I'm trying to look through the monitor to see what you guys are seeing. Again, this one doesn't have the drawn lines, remember, but I'm trying to follow the warp and the weft in the fabric, the grain of the fabric. So where this is a woven fabric, it's a bark cloth, and I don't know if you guys can actually see it through the monitor there. I can actually see the woven threads in up and down, the warp and the weft. So for this particular one, because I forgot to draw the lines, I'm just trying to follow the fabric. And with this piece, because this bark cloth isn't as heavy as that upholstery fabric, I've got a knot in my cotton now. Can you see that? I've formed a knot, and this is one of the reasons why you don't cut it so long as I have. So instead of freaking out, panicking, thinking that you won't get the knot out, you can't cut it off, you'll cut it off, whatnot. If you look at this, you can see there's a loop formed. It almost looks like a slip knot, and that's essentially all it is. So normally, it doesn't always work. Most of the time it does. You can stick your needle in that loop, hold the tail down, and pull on that. It's not shifting, okay? So I started to pull, it's not moving. So we'll try again. Instead of in that top loop, we go under it, and we try, there we go, it's pulled out. And there you go, you don't have that knot now. So, however, because I pulled that quite firmly then, my fabric's puckered. So what I'm going to do is just gently or firmly tease those stitches out so my fabric's not puckered. It looks puckered in here. It's actually the print on the fabric. It's not as puckered as it looks. So that's it. I've got 3 going at once now. I'm just doing these running stitches on these pieces I've cut out that I can use. At this stage, I'm planning to use these for needlebook covers. I think I'll come back another day to show you where I go next. Otherwise, I'm sure you don't want to sit here and watch me stitching for hours on end. So we've started with our wadding or Pellon. And again, this is a scrap piece I had. I personally like to use as much stuff I have as I can. And one of the reasons I started doing this in more recent years is because I wanted to use textiles I had. I wanted to use some of the clothing that I had was beautiful. I had beautiful linen clothes, great, beautiful textiles. It seemed a waste to throw them out, so I decided to cut them up and start using what I had to make new items. So that's now snowballed a bit, and I've got friends and family collecting vintage textiles for me that I can use to make with. And in our minds, we feel like we're doing our part to keep these textiles out of the landfill. Mind you, I will probably still have some that will go to landfill over the years, but I try and do what I can to keep it out. So, with that being said, as I mentioned earlier, this Pellon was a piece that I had saved from when I was working in a quilt shop. It was an offcut from a customer's quilt. They didn't want the offcuts. They allowed me to bring them home. So I'm using those at the moment. I do have iron-on Pellon that I bought recently, but because these covers are small enough to fit on these pieces of scrap Pellon, I'm using those. Another thing is, as I've already mentioned, if you have iron-on Pellon and you can iron your fabric to your Pellon, you do not have to do your tacking stitches. You can, if you want, iron on and then tack over it for a bit of added security, because sometimes if that glue has gone off on that iron-on Pellon, it will initially stick, but then as you're working, sometimes it will lift off if it has gone stale. And it can go stale. I don't know about the more modern stuff, but when I was in the quilt store, your Pellon, your Violin goes stale. Any of those iron-on adhesives can go stale and they're not as effective. There are a couple of little tricks that you can use to store them, but we'll talk about that another day. So we've started with our fabric. Again, usually I use cotton or linen. This is a piece of Sanderson upholstery fabric because I already had it cut. This is a piece of vintage brushed cotton or flannelette, similar to flannelette. And this one's a piece of vintage bark cloth, so again cotton. These are fabrics that I had that I want to use or that have been gifted to me. We've done our piece of fabric, our wadding. We've learned how to baste the fabric to the wadding so your fabric doesn't shift or scrunch up. And then I've shown you how I start my running stitch. If you decide to have a go, get to this stage, get all your running stitches in, and then I'll come back next time with our next step. I will probably, if you want to be prepared for what we will do next, I will be doing something like, because this is going to be a needlebook. This has been inspired by Beck of So Be Curated. These were, I saw hers, so I'm inspired by her needlebooks, and this is what I'm heading towards, that sort of style. This is part of a kit that I did buy from Beck. So this is a piece of cutter quilt. I obviously haven't stitched that yet, but this is something that similar to what we're going to do with this. So if you want to be prepared when we come back, you might want to think about what you want to put in your needle book. I will be putting a lining on this side, possibly wool. So either doctor's flannel, felted wool blanketing. Blanketing might be a bit chunky if you've got a nice fine one. I've got some finer ones. A piece of wool scarf, wool suiting. I've got wool suiting fabric here that's not heavy. You can also use wool felt. I'm saying wool because the wool is the best textile to have to put your pins and needles in. They're less likely to rust in wool. So I will be putting wool as my lining. You can use a piece of cotton. You can use whatever you want. But for me, I want to use them as needle books, so I'm going to have a piece of wool on the inside, like this one, for example. I've got a piece of wool felt in here. Then you might want to think about whether, now I don't know if this will stay. This is what I've been playing with. And if you go and have a look at Beck's Instagram, she's done some amazing needle books, and she even details how she does them on YouTube. So you can go and have a look there if you'd like to. Beck usually has a collection of doilies, sandwich trays, tray cloths, beautiful vintage textiles, and then she applies some accents as well. So far this one I've planned out, I've got a vintage sandwich tray cloth, a piece of yellow check, I can't remember what that's called. Next I've got a vintage hanky. Beck does use hankies. I won't leave this hanky like that, it's folded in half. I will probably cut it through there, and I haven't decided whether I'll flip it and make a pocket with it, so think about that. What you can do is get, for example, possibly do something like, and it's going to be too big to show you exactly what I want to do, so I'm just going to fold a little pleat there that you wouldn't necessarily keep. So you could do something like that with your hanky, and then you'd stitch those ends down and then your center, so you can create pockets with your hanky. And again, just suggestions, just ideas. Another piece of wool, another sheet to put your pins and needles in. I'm not convinced I like this one. Beck usually has lovely doilies in the center, but I thought I might be able to use that and make a pocket. I don't know. Also think about, with these doilies, if you want to put another one on the back, because these will be used as pages most likely. Or you can, if you stitch it onto your wool back, you're not going to have as much of your wool to put your pins and needles in. So for something like this, think about what if you want to put something on the back. With your wool piece, you can cut out. I haven't even got any of my vintage embroidered textiles in here yet. So Beck and Kate and a few of the other girls, the Roxy sisters, they cut up their embroidered doilies. I don't have one on hand. I've got some that are damaged that are easier for me to cut up because they're damaged. Here we go. So this is just an example. It's not the right colours, but to give you an idea. So this doily's damaged, it's stained. So for example, I might cut out this flower and then applique that onto here. That's an example. You can put bits of lace on. You can use lengths of lace to create a pocket in your book. So go and have a look at Beck's YouTube tutorials. See how she puts her needle books together if you get stuck. That's if you want to go ahead and join me with this. Get some ideas. Pull some things together that you might have at home so we can get started on the next stages after we've done all our running stitch on these. it's most likely we will be doing something like, for example, when I put my backing piece on, which as I mentioned will probably be wool, we will then, before we put our center in, stitch all the way around with probably a blanket stitch. That's the most practical and effective stitch for this particular step. So think about what you want to do, what you want to line this piece with. If you're going to use it as a needle book, I recommend something made from wool. Think about whether you want to have a strip of fabric or lace or something down the side or across the bottom that you can stitch in as a pocket. So I'll just try and give you a bit more of a visual here. Where is it? Oh, fiddlesticks, where did I put it? It's right under my nose here somewhere. I've just got that many things out. Okay, this isn't the right size, but I just want to try and give you a visual, so I'm making myself clear because I feel like I'm maybe confusing some people a bit. Okay, once we've finished stitching this piece, we want to think about what we're going to line it with. I will be using something made from wool. This is a piece of old wool blanketing. I won't be using this piece because this has felted and it's too thick. And when I say too thick, what I mean is by the time we stitch it together and come to fold it, it's already quite chunky and we still want to stick some more pages in the middle. So I do have other wool blanketing that I can't find that's not as thick. I also have, for example, Doctor's Flannel, which is nice and fine. I also have a beautiful piece of mohair fabric, wool fabric. So this isn't quite wide enough, but it'll give you an idea, okay? So I might line that with this piece of mohair, okay? Then think about whether you want to have something like, just for an example, you can place a piece of lace across the bottom. And once we do our blanket stitch all the way around, that will stitch that lace in, and then we do our stitching down the middle to hold the pages in. You'll end up with lace pockets, for example. You might want to think about, instead of lace, you might want to get a piece of fabric. So a strip of fabric that you hem or turn over so you don't have a raw edge. You might be able to use, this isn't the right length, an old doily along the bottom. You might have a square one, a long doily with a nice crochet edge that you can have up here for the top of your pocket. You can also, instead of having it across the bottom and have your pockets in there, you can run it down the sides on the inside of both, and then when you close your book, your needle book, you've got inside pockets that way. So they're just things to think about. As I said, go and have a look at Beck's YouTube and see what she's put together if you're not clear on what I'm trying to explain. There are many others. There's the Roxy Sisters, there's Kate in the Nest, I can't remember any others offhand, I'm sorry. So when we come back next time, that's what we'll be doing. We'll be after we've done all our stitching, if you'd like to join in, we'll come back, we'll line it, we'll square it off first, we'll make sure it's nice and square. We'll line it, but I want you to make sure you think about if you want to put pockets on the inside flaps, what you can make those pockets out of, because we're going to stitch them in when we do the blanket stitching. Otherwise we're going to have to come back and stitch them again, and it will get untidy and it will get bulky. So think about your line, what you want to use for your lining, if you want to have pockets, and what you want to make those pockets out of, whether they go in this direction or this direction. You can use lace, you can use cotton fabric, you should probably use nearly any fabric that's not too chunky. You can use wool, I suppose. I mean, you could have another strip of wool on top and then blanket stitch at the edge to hold it together so it doesn't stretch or tear. And, you know, just do it that way, whatever you think. But just make sure you consider that, so when we come back next time, we can start piecing it together. I may have just lost you. My reception just dropped out. But I think I need to finish up because this video has gone for nearly 2 hours and I don't know if it will even upload. I did want to show you before we go. When I was at the vet's yesterday, it was next door to Spotlight. Woohoo. And towards the end of the day, I dawdled into Spotlight to have a look. Now, I did notice yesterday Beck had shared some beautiful fabrics that she'd just got in. She did some little bundles that were available. I would have loved to have been able to buy them, but they weren't in my budget yesterday. But when I walked into Spotlight, I saw these, and they're similar. They're not as nice, obviously, but they are similar. It's not something I would have normally picked, but I've been saying that for the last few weeks since I've been doing these needlebooks and the vintage fabric collages and the Beck inspired stitcheries and the Kate in the Nest and the Roxy Sisters. I'm tending more towards these kind of little tiny florals. I like the vintage feed sack prints, but they're not within my budget. So I'm looking for things that are similar to that. Obviously these are modern, these are new, they're not the same, but I'm trying to get similar to that. So I thought they were cute. I probably should take them out and show you because there's not really any need to keep it all bundled up so you can't see. I'm losing my light too. It's been such a lovely day here today. Okay, I'll show this, get these out so you can get a bit of a closer look. That's a pretty, I don't think the colours are translating true through the monitor. So what you're seeing, I don't think, this is almost a cornflower blue. It's a very pretty light blue. It looks much darker through the monitor. And this is a pretty, it's almost, I'm not entirely sure, no, it's white. I thought the background was a very soft pink, but it's white. And the flowers are a cool, I want to say cool red. I think they're more of a fuchsia. They're pink. They're a nice dark pink. They're cool colours. Doesn't look that colour through the monitor. It looks red. This is a lovely mauve, soft mauve with a little daisy on it. The same print in a green. It's a very pretty greens. I don't like green. I'm not a green person. I don't like yellow. But that's a very pretty green. It's a cool green. I want to call it a mint green, but I don't think it's quite mint. This almost reminds me, this print almost reminds me of one of the old William Morris prints we used to have. It's not the same, but it reminds me of it. It's a nice pale blue background. This is that nice pink again that's coming through looking a bit red. It's the same colour. This is a nice soft, almost baby pink with a little white daisy. Those daisies are white, they're not green. They look green through the monitor, they're actually white. Here's the same print in a lovely mauve. It's a very pretty mauve. They're pretty colours. I don't often find bundles, especially little fine florals like this, that I like. But they're quite pretty colours. They're delicate and, dare I say, feminine. That's that nice cornflower blue again. That's a yellow on a white background. And as much as I don't like yellow, I quite like that. Here we've got that same William Morris-ish. I think it's the foliage that makes me think of that. White background, yellow flowers. And then this one, white background, cute little pink daisies. So I got those, and then I had a Spotlight voucher actually. That's the only reason I got them. And then as I'm walking out the door, I spotted these. There were other colours, but I just loved them. They were half price. I only got half a metre. They've got pretty little strawberries on them. I thought they'd look cute in the Needlebooks. I just noticed there's a little blue daisy on this one and a little yellow daisy on this one. So potentially I think I could get away with mixing and matching because they're in the same tones, same colours. But that's it for today, guys. I have rambled on and on and on for nearly 2 hours. I hope that you enjoyed this video today. I hope that you may have learned something new that you didn't know. Oh, here we go again. There's 2 of them. I think they live in the same house actually. Oh. Every time I hear that noise, my whole body tenses up. Anyway, I hope you may have learned something new today that you didn't know. If you didn't, thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you guys so much. I've only really been on here doing these videos for the last 4 weeks, and the amount of encouragement and wonderful positive comments I've been receiving have been amazing. So thank you so much. Sorry, I'm losing my camera. So you've had enough too. Thank you all so very much for all your kind support. I've been a bit overwhelmed actually with how much interest there's been. I'd love it if you'd like to join along as I put together these needle books. And again, I'm doing 3 at a time. I don't usually do that many at once. I'm actually doing 4, I think. You don't have to do that. If you want to do 1, I'd love it if you'd follow along. Please don't feel obliged to. You don't have to. There's no expectation. But if it's something you feel you'd like to do, I'd love to have you join us. I'd also love it if you haven't already, if you could press the subscribe button. The more subscribers I get, the more airtime YouTube will give me. The only reason I've been able to start doing these live videos is because I reached 100 subscribers. From what they've sent me, I only get to do 50 of these unless I get, I think, 3,000 subscribers, and then I'm free to do as many as I want. But until I get more subscribers, they will limit me again. I won't be able to do these. So if you want to keep seeing these videos, please subscribe, and please let your friends know about this channel if they may be interested in subscribing too. If there's anything that I haven't made clear that you would like me to clarify, please drop a comment in the comment box and I will address that in the next video. If there's anything that you'd like me to show you that I haven't yet, let me know. If there's anything you'd like to learn that you think I may be able to teach you, let me know. Drop it in the box below. I want to try and keep my lessons free and available to everybody. Not that they're specifically lessons as such. I want to keep it casual. I want it so you guys feel like you can sit down with me and we're sitting in the room together and I'm just sort of guiding you, gently guiding you through if you don't know what you're doing, if you get stuck, if you want inspiration, for example. As I said, I'd like to try and keep my content free. I may not be able to at this point because I'm not earning any income. I need a new phone. My phone is almost dead. It keeps stopping and cutting out. It's overheating. It's over 5 years old. I use my phone for everything. It's my lifeline. I use it to do all my filming. I use it to do all my editing. I use it to do all of these videos and more. I use it as a phone. I use it for my emails. I use it for everything. I need a new phone. I need a new light stand to help me record. This one I'm using is broken. It's been held together with several rolls of gaffer tape. There's a few other things I need. My kettle blew up today. I don't have a kettle now. But I want to try and keep it all for free. I want to keep it accessible to everybody, because when I was learning years ago, when I wanted to learn, I was thirsty to learn. I wanted that knowledge. I couldn't afford to pay for lessons, either online or in real life or whatever. So I want to be able to make it available to as many people as I can. So at this point, I want to say, and I'm struggling to do this, but I keep getting told to do it. I just want to put it out there. I've made it clear I need a new phone. I need a new light stand. If anyone is in a position to help me out with that, I have created an Amazon wish list. Yes, the phone is very expensive. For me it is. But I also know for some people it can be seen as pocket change, you know. I know people like that. I'm not going to go to them and say, can you buy me this phone? Because they probably will, and I don't think that's right. But if you're learning from me, if you enjoy my videos, if you're in a position to help me out, if you're willing to help me out, I'll drop that Amazon link in my description and you can go and have a look if you're willing to help. The products are in there that I need. There's a couple of things I don't need. They're just a couple of wishes as well. And again, they're not necessary. There's a book. There's a couple of light stands because I don't know which one will be better. I'm hoping to add a couple more books. Again, the books aren't necessary. But I think I've set it up so you can gift me anonymously if you wish to do so. I chose Amazon because it's the simplest way to do this for all of us. Again, no pressure. Don't feel like you have to help. Don't feel like you need to buy me anything. I'm just putting it out there in case one of you may be able to help and would like to help. I've also been encouraged. I do have a Buy Me a Coffee page. I haven't published it here, I don't think. But I've been encouraged to share that as well. So if any of you find value in my videos, if you would like to show your appreciation some way and support me so I can continue to bring out these videos, you can follow that link, and for the cost of a cup of coffee you can send me that money. I'm going to stop there because I don't like begging. I've been encouraged by my friends and my family to start putting it out there. I mean, you never know what might happen, but I just want to thank you again so very much. Thank you all for doing this journey with me. Thank you for your encouragement. Thank you for your fabulous comments that I've been getting. It's so encouraging and supportive. I know I've got some good information in my head that I've wanted to share for a long time. It's taken me a while to work out how to do that effectively. This seems to be working at the moment. Thank you for, yeah, just thanks for being here. As I said earlier, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. That will give me more ability to share more content. I can keep sharing my knowledge that way. And if you know anyone, if you have any friends who you think might like my channel as well, send them the link and let them know if they like it to hit the subscribe button as well. Thank you again. Thank you so much. And I'll see you again next time. I don't know if it will be tomorrow. It might be. I want to try and have those stitcheries finished so we can start the next step. So, yeah, thanks again. See you next time. Have a wonderful day and be safe. I'll see you next time.